Hi everyone, we are live on Facebook now.
A very good afternoon to all the participants joining for this webinar. Hi, I am Ankit Singh and I am the host for this session. The program that we are currently joining in is for the awareness cum orientation program for the teachers and the training information on the skill subject at the school, at the secondary and the higher secondary level. The participants who are joining in for the IT/ITES Sector Skill Council, SSC NASSCOM, the standard setting body in the country for the IT skills, we develop the standards for the skill curricula that gets implemented over the country. We are building the talent pipeline for the IT/ITES workforce. At this specific webinar, we would like to focus on the orientation program for the faculty members and the school principals who will be joining us to make them aware about the current standards in the IT/ITES curriculum, along with the training that can be imparted to the students enrolled into the multiple programs. Basically, for the standard for 10th and 12th, the candidates who are enrolled into the IT/ITES program are going through the subjects such as data entry operator, IT helpdesk attendant, web application, database administration. So these are the few topics that are being broadly covered into the curriculum that has been proposed by the CBSE as well as the IT/ITES Sector Skill Council. For this webinar, we are organizing this in coordination with CBSE, who has supported us a lot in getting this organized. For this session, we'll be joined by Dr. Biswajit Saha, who is the Director, Training and Skill Education, CBSE. The special address will be given by Mr. Ajit Padi, who is the Director Operation for the IT/ITES Sector Skill Council. And the session will be led by our expert, Mr. Venkatraman Umakan, who is the Member Success Leader for the Future Skills, which is a NASSCOM initiative. So I'll be moving towards, and I would like to invite Mr. Padi to have an opening remark for this session. Over to you.
Hi, this is Ajit. Good afternoon. So Ankit, do you want me to address or Dr. Saha you have asked for?
Sir, he'll be joining around at 4:45, so you can start, sir.
Okay, got it. Hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ajit. I manage the operations at SSC, that's Sector Skill Council, NASSCOM. So I'm sure many of you are aware about the NASSCOM, but let me state what NASSCOM is all about. Okay, NASSCOM is the industry association for IT and ITS companies, which is a $180 billion industry. Okay, and at this point of time, I know that it is kind like close to 2,600 IT company is are member of our association. So it represents close to 85% of the 180 billion annualized the revenue of the industry. So you can see it is pretty significant, and we're looking at then the next 5 to 10 years, this industry will reach close to 500 billion or maybe more, based on the way that the new age technologies are coming and the digitization effort is going on. So that is what it is. But I think the major focus for today is that how we can bring that what we are doing, in the skill sector, and how we can bring it at the school level. And we are quite, pretty deep engaged with school systems, across India. We work with close to 20 state boards. We also work with CBSE in few of the states to ensure that the skill portion of the the IT, can be imparted at the class 9th to class 12th level. And we see that, in the new NEP framework as well, a lot of effort has been done or been mentioned about, how do we ensure that from class 6 onwards, the specific skills, specifically on the digital skills, are imparted, to the class 6 student as well. So thank you for all your enthusiastic participation in today's session. I think that we all by now know that how the IT skills is kind of a necessity in every industry that we can think of. Okay, starting from airlines to the retail to the banking, you take it everything that there is IT skills are pretty much prevalent or rather important. So we expect that our youth of tomorrow should have the minimum basic IT skills with them. And you as the teachers, as the principals of esteemed institutions, we are looking forward for your cooperation and see that, okay, how you can take the importance of the learning and IT skill to the youth of your schools, to the school kids, and make them excited about the IT related jobs and IT skills that it brings in. And while my colleague Venkat will speak more about that, the digital economy, the kind of job roles, that what we are doing on the future skill perspective, he will go deep on that one. But we'll all know that the IT skills are pretty much necessary for all walks of life, and we expect that students will get a pretty the bad introduction, and it will lead to an eye opener for them for a digital journey, in their coming days and coming years. And I would like to thank Mr. Saha. He's not yet there. I'm sure he will be joining in pretty soon on this, and the CBSE for giving us the opportunity to speak with all of you, and and give us the opportunity to go into the schools and touch all the young minds that is there. So I've not take much of your time. I think my colleague Venkat would like to go next and go deeper into that what we're trying to discuss here. I wish all of you the very best and happy learning. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Ajit, for having an introductory remark. So the other keynote person that who has joined us is Mr. R.P. Singh, who is the Joint Secretary, Department of Skill Education, CBSE. So, sir has been very supporting in getting this session organized and reaching to the higher number of school participants. So, this event will not have been successful without his kind support. So, R.P. Singh sir is also there. And now I would like to invite Mr. Venkat from NASSCOM team to have an expert talk on the session that we have joined for. Over to you, Venkat. I guess you are on mute.
Sorry. Thanks, Ankit.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining in. I know there are a lot of teachers and principals who've joined in. So first of all, I would like to express my heartfelt respect and gratitude for all the teachers here, because you are the ones actually who sort of develop the youth for the better tomorrow. So, and whatever we are today, I think we'll have to give a lot of gratitude to our teachers who have really got up to this level. So thank you so much for that. And let me just bring up my, okay. So could you please help me with the screen sharing? I think it's disabled.
Hi, Venkat. Please, you can share your screen.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So if you could just confirm if you're able to see the screen, okay.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yes, Vikram.
Okay. Topic today, I was told it's on the specific job role, which is the domestic data entry operator. And we would touch upon on one module of that, which is more on the employability skills. And I think the next one would be followed up in a different webinar. So this is what we would cover today in terms of the employability skills, which comprises of 5 units. And let me tell you, irrespective of which industry you land up in the future, these skills would be absolutely relevant. And the need for these skills have really amplified over the last 4 to 5 months post the pandemic. And nothing to do with the pandemic, it's just because we've got into the virtual world, some of these skills becomes even more important. So I would like to start with the first one, which is on the communication skills. Right? Now, why did I mention that these skills have got amplified in the last 3-4 months? Because I'm sure all the teachers today, most of them may not be used to doing these virtual sessions, but today out of a dire need, you're sort of forced to do that. And I might really appreciate all the teachers taking that effort to get into the new world, adapt to that. Because I've seen my son who's in the 10th standard, and some of his teachers, he says they put in a lot of effort preparing the PowerPoint and preparing for the sessions, which wasn't the case earlier. You just walk into the classroom, use the blackboard, and then start doing it. So communication skills is very, very critical aspect. And if you look at from this particular unit, what typically the students will be able to get is one, they leverage different methods of communication. Now, when I say different methods, it could be the verbal, written, and so on. Then you identify the elements of communication style as a cycle. Then you identify factors affecting communication and demonstrate the knowledge of basic writing skills. So this is what typically gets covered in this particular unit. Now, when you look at the methods of communication, right? So what is important here is if you look at, there are different, obviously we all know there are verbal communication, there is a written communication, and of course, there is a non-verbal thing. Now, I want to bring attention to all the teachers and the principals here, not that you're not aware, but just want to highlight now that we are all in the virtual world and some of these aspects you might be thinking whether it is still relevant. But when you talk about communication, I'm not sure how many of you really knew that, is the content, the matter that we speak forms only 7% of the effectiveness of communication. The other part, you might be wondering if it's only 7% which is content, what does the rest of 93% comprise of? So the voice modulation is something which is 38%, and the language is 55%. So you might be wondering in a virtual world, if I'm just talking without my video on, does it really matter? It does. Because the way you move your body, the way you want voice modulation, and even if you're smiling, the other person on the other end can actually get that. The energy just get transmitted. So this is something which is very important aspect, especially in the virtual world as well. So moving on, 1 second. Yeah. So if you talk about the elements of communication, it's usually understood that it's the sender and the receiver, right? So a person who's talking, the other person who's on the receiving end. But is that what it is? So there is obviously a message. The sender wants to communicate a message through a particular channel, right? For example, I'm communicating this message through this particular Facebook Live and the Zoom channel as well. And there are thousands of people across who are on the receiving end. And then of course, there is a feedback loop which flows in. For example, somebody might put in the chat script saying that the audio is not clear, we're not able to hear, or I'm not able to understand. That's a feedback loop. So both the sender and the receiver play a very important role when you talk about communication. Because I had this very wonderful thing, which I just want to share, is a definition which you call about communication is a function of the other person's listening, right? Because even if you're talking, you could be the best speaker, but if the other person is not receiving, the communication is actually of not much use. So those are the ones. Moving on to the factors that affects the communication. First one is, of course, the lack of clarity. If you're not sure about what you're going to communicate, obviously it's going to be difficult to communicate. That's why we say the preparation is very important. Overload information, that's an absolutely important piece. And I think a lot of people are wary, especially in today's world, where you don't want to dump with too much of information to the students, because assimilation, it's very easy to judge when you're face-to-face, but slightly difficult, or it's about getting used when you're in the virtual world. So information overload is another factor which affects communication. For example, if I keep talking like this for hours together, I'm sure most of you would log off or might lose interest. So it's also important to make sure that I only give you the right information in the right manner as well. The third thing is the distracted communication. And this, I think, happens very often, especially if you're in the virtual platform, you're on a Zoom call, suddenly a message pops up or an email pops up and you get distracted. And it does impact your flow. So that's another factor which impacts your communication. And of course, the last one is the disinterested people. If the person on the other side is not interested, irrespective of how good you are, you can't really convey more. And of course, there are many more. A couple of things which I would like to bring it up here is one, it's also about communication. When you say it's also about the image that you carry about the other person who's the recipient. Now, a lot of you would have seen, you sort of complain saying that, you know what, I don't think this guy meant that. Why do you say that? Because you can understand what the person intended or what the state of mind that the person was in. Right? So the image that you carry about the person does matter. The most important thing, which is usually neglected when it comes to communication, is the listening skill. So people do think when it's communication, it just keep talking. It's not that. It's listening is very important, because the more you listen, you can tweak the communication accordingly. Right? So there could be, again, this listening could be a verbal, it could be a non-verbal as well. For example, if you're presenting in a group, the way you see the audience responding to that, you could actually tweak it. You know, okay, whether the audience is with you or they are losing interest, then you could sort of change the track. Now, moving on to the basic writing skills, I think all of us are very much aware. Words actually make a lot of difference, right? It's actually the word actually makes the world to us. The kind of words that you choose, it actually defines who you are and also what you're shaping the other students or the other community around you. So the kind of sentences, the parts of speech, how do you construct the sentence? How do you communicate that? Because I always believe when it comes to communication, more than what you say, how you say that is absolutely important. You might have to sometimes pass on a very difficult message, but if you're communicating in the right way, the how part is actually good. It is actually taken in a much better way rather than just taking it in an abusive way or so. So that makes a huge difference. And I think as teachers and principals and as parents, right, it's very important how we communicate, because unknowingly, while our intent is always good as teachers and parents to make sure that we want our students, our kids to really do very well in life, but unknowingly, a lot of times we say something which could actually have a larger impact. It gets registered in the subconscious mind and it could play along for a very long time. And I'm sure everybody would have experienced that at some stage or the other. So that was more on the first unit, which is on the communication skills. This, of course, is, again, I'm reiterating that it's an absolutely important skill to have, especially in today's world. And if you're in a virtual world, the way you talk, the voice modulation, if you remember the numbers that I said, the content, what you speak is only 7% relevance. The body language and the voice modulation is what 93% comprises of. So make sure you have that really right. So moving on to the self-management skills, which is the unit number 2. The students at the end of this unit are expected to describe the importance of self-management, for them to be self-aware, how they are, identify the factors which enable them to become more self-confident. And usually what I do is look at things on your daily basis. Typically what we do is when we talk about self-management, time management, we look at somebody who is like probably quite a few notches away from us. And most often we get disappointed saying that, okay, we are not like them or we cannot be like them. The key thing is to just reflect on your own life and see how well are you managing yourself and how confident are you. So these are some of the important traits which are required. One, of course, is the stress management. I know earlier it used to be only people who are working professionals, but in the last decade or so, we've seen students actually having a lot more stress. and of course the teachers and all that. And it's not about the teachers or the principal, it's about the entire environment, it's about the ecosystem and the amount of time that they spend on things other than your studies or games. So the digital thing, the time that they spend also has a distraction and impact on the stress. Time optimization is, of course, is absolutely important. Problem solving. This, again, from an industry perspective, if you ask me, this has become a very, very essential skill today. Because more than problem solving, they're also talking about problem definition today. Right? So if you're not able to define a problem, you might be thinking that you have solved a problem, but most often you might have solved a wrong problem. So problem definition and solving is very important. Decision making, planning and organizing. I think these I see again, when I compare when I was in school and to when my son is now, there's a huge difference in the way things are operated today. Thanks, as I said, again, to the entire board and the faculties as well. They are also adapting to the requirements of the newer world and doing things in a much different way. So I see their skills around planning, organizing, or leading is a lot better than what it used to be. Now, self-confidence is something which is very important, right? I would say this is something which is very fundamental. You might be extremely good in your academia. You could be scoring 95, 98%, but if your self-confidence is low, it can only take you thus far. It can't take you to real potential. At the same time, there are people that I've seen who are extremely confident. Their know-how might be average. I'm not saying it's low, but an average. They do a lot better. Right? So, and self-confidence, again, it is not something where you can sit in a classroom and then in a couple of days you come out transformed. It's very hard. So it all depends upon the kind of the social, cultural, and physical thing as well, in terms of how you're brought up, what the circle that you are in with. Because one of the theory which says, which is very interesting, and I would want all of you to just pay attention to this, is they say you are an average of the 5% that you spend the most time with. I'll just reiterate that theory. It says you're the average of the 5% that you spend the most time with. So you would have seen, like parents as parents or teachers, we say, you know what, be in a good circle, mingle with good students, or mingle with good people who have good characters and all that. It's nothing but it just boils down to this theory, because somewhere you sort of start enacting or imbibing those qualities as well. So that's the reason it's very important. And I had written a blog on this, which I just want to share with you. I had called it as the MRP principle. MRP, as you know, is the maximum retail price. Now, imagine if you've gone to a store, right? And you look at a particular product and there is an MRP return there. Say it's about 100 rupees. Now, have you ever in your life gone to the shopkeeper and said, no, I can't pay you 100, I will pay only 120 rupees? It's absolutely not, right? It's very, I don't think there could be any scenario in a normal context. There could be a scenario where you handle only one product and there's a huge demand for that. It could be a different scenario, but in a normal scenario. So what I'm trying to derive by this is the same concept if you apply to our life. It's about the MRP that you set for yourself, the maximum retail price that you set for yourself. Please remember, nobody else other than maybe your parents would probably set a higher MRP for you. So that also boils down to your self-confidence, self-esteem in terms of where you really want to put it. And as teachers and as parents, I think we have a huge role to play to make sure that we really don't crush their confidence unknowingly. I'm not saying we will do that knowingly, but that is an absolutely important trait to have. Now, some of the do's and don'ts, I did already speak about that, so I'm not reiterating that. If you talk about do's, I would say one is to always believe in yourself. That's the first thing. Look at all the things that you've done, because usually what happens is we tend to focus on our weaknesses than our strength. So the best thing is to nurture your strength, accept your weakness. If it is really something which is hindering your growth, you got to work on that. Most important thing is reach out for help. Most often we try to solve all the problems ourselves. It could be anybody, irrespective of whether it's a kid or a student or a CXO. It's always good to get a different perspective and then work on that. So that's a little bit on the do's, I would say. The don'ts, again, as I said, the words are very important. To the communication part, more than what you say, I think how you say that is very important. So that's an important aspect that all of us need to keep in mind. Because most of the thing that if you see, if there is a rift that is happening or a fight that is happening, it is not really because of what the person said. It's about how they reacted to it. So it's about us, I think, how do we become more responsible citizens? How do we really make sure we are in harmony? So that's something which I would say from a self-confidence perspective. So those are the first two units, which is on your communication and one on your self-confidence and all that. Now we move on to the unit number 3, which is the basic ICT skills. Here again, if you look at it, the intent is that by the end of the unit, the students will be able to describe the role of ICT in day-to-day life. I think if you look at today, most of the time, at least I've seen my son and most of the kids around, out of maybe say about 16 hours that they're awake, about 10 to 12 hours easily, they are with their devices, either the mobile devices or the laptop or something else. So they probably know much more than what I know, at least from, though I've been in the industry for quite some time, I know they are much more advanced in that. So that's one thing. Identify the various components of a computer system. This again is sort of varying over the period of time. What we used to see as your hardware, CPU and the monitor and all that. Now you see an integrated piece. And we see more of that, right? So a particular device actually doing multiple roles than what it's supposed to be. And I'll cover a little more on that. So how do we identify the various peripheral devices, perform basic computer operations, connect with the world using internet and its application? I think this is already happening much more than what we would want to. So I don't think we need to touch a lot deeper on that. So if you look at the types of ICT in terms of the communication, usually it's happening more with the smartphones and the tablets. The desktop actually is sort of going down. It's more of laptop and the tabs and all that. Data management, of course, is a very important aspect of that. Online collaboration, social media management, email management. So these are some of the things which are covered as part of ICT. So basic components, I think each one of you would be aware of that. I don't need to really mention. The only change that has been there is while this picture, if you see, there is a separate monitor, there is a CPU, storage, a keyboard, memory, and all that. Usually what we see today is all, except in the keyboard, the rest are all integrated into one piece. It's all integrated with the monitor. At the back of the monitor is where you have the CPU, storage, memory, and of course the keyboard separately. So those are some of the components that generally students get to know. And of course, there are other peripheral devices like what are the input devices, output devices, storage, and the communication. Now, if you look at, when I was looking at this image yesterday, I just saw this digital camera. I'm not sure if kids of the current generation would even know what it is, right? Because today, what has happened is your mobile device has become more of a camera than a mobile device, right? So people, when they buy a mobile today, the general conversation is no longer about, okay, what is the RAM, what is the memory and all that. It's about, okay, how many megapixels does it have? What is the front camera resolution? That is what it is. So that's how things are getting integrated. So the devices are actually playing multiple roles than what it used to play earlier. And this, if you see, the reason I'm saying that is also if you look at from our own individual perspective as well. In the industry, as students step into the industry, as faculty members, I think we are also expected to play multiple roles, have skills in multiple areas. Gone are the days where you're only expert in one area. It is required, but that may not be enough. So you're expected to have skills in multiple areas, and cross-functional and cross skills are becoming very important in today's world. The storage devices, as we know, has had a huge transformation. It started off all with a small floppy disk. Then we came with the CD, then the DVD, then we have the Blu-ray, and now you have a small chip, which sometimes you don't even realize if it's there in the pocket, which can probably store multiple GBs of data. And then, of course, you have the communication channel, but I think we use that more often now than ever before, or realize the importance of that. Because today, for example, if you're doing this session, the most important thing is to make sure that the network is good. Right? At both ends. It's not just my end, to make sure that as a listener, you also have a good connectivity. You can listen to me and see me. So the reliability, the availability of these communication devices have really gone up. And there's a lot of innovation which is happening in that space as well. And you might see a web camera, a picture here on communication, but most often today it's all integrated. As I said, it's not a separate item, it's all integrated. So moving on with the perform basic operations. This again is a very high level thing. It's how do you start a computer, sequencing of the screen. I think most of you would really know that how to use it. So I'm not getting into details of that, but this is what the unit sort of covers. The usage of internet and its application. Just to reflect, I think Ajit did mention about the future skills, since I lead the future skills initiative also in NASSCOM. The future skills initiative actually focuses on some of these emerging technologies, which are related to the digital transformation areas. Now, things like artificial intelligence, analytics, cloud, cybersecurity, and so on. Now, these skills have become extremely important. And as a country, if you look at it from an overall macro level, I'm saying, from an economy perspective, we are looking at growing the digital economy from 200 billion to about 1 trillion by 2025. And why am I sharing this with you? Because it is the youth of today, the students of today, who are actually going to be the product of tomorrow, who would actually make this a reality. Because if we don't have students who are really acquired or have the necessary skills to get into the jobs and deliver, I think we would lose out on that. And it's not just about the organizations losing out, but as a country, I think we would fall back in terms of our economy, the job, and the overall economic status of the individuals as well. So, and I would see, if you just reflect back on the last 3 or 4 months that we've been through the pandemic, we've seen actually more of digital transformation in the last 3-4 months than we have seen in the last 2 decades. So this is like sort of enforced on us. It may not be by choice for everyone, but that's a reality, right? And what it suddenly everybody wakes up to realize is what we thought as some of the technologies which are relevant only to the industry, some of these IT organizations or say a banking organization, suddenly we see that it is all around us. Everything that we do right from the morning, right from logging on to this session to conversing, like we are conversing only on a chat and an audio, right? So that's again technology. Now, where does the data reside? It's there in the cloud. And the moment the data, your private information is there somewhere else, there is always a question about security, right? So everything associated with data, because the moment you talk about digital, the first thing that comes to mind is data. So D for digital, D for data. And the more the data has become the new natural resource. And the first thing that really has impacted is on the security aspect. Everybody is sort of worried about that. I'm sure all of you, when we talk about this Arogya Setu or any other app, the initial speculation was only about, okay, I'm putting all my details. Is that safe? So that's sort of the way all these technologies are playing a role in our life today, right? Today, you're taking the session, you're watching movies, you're talking to people who are miles apart. Because imagine if the situation, if the pandemic would have hit us, maybe say 15 years back, situation would have been a lot different. Today, it does have an impact. We are impacted, no doubt. And it's not something which is something which we welcome. But the point is, because of technology, we are still connected, right? Probably we are more connected than we were earlier. Earlier, there were a lot of logistical issues in terms of you have to have a speaker or a guest of honor to match up everybody's time. They'll have to travel and all. Today, it's just being in the comfort of their own house. You just log in and you do that session for 1 hour and you're done. And you become a lot more productive. So that's how technology has been playing in and around us. So in terms of introduction, I don't think anything is required here. Search engine, we all know. We say that sometimes just as a fun, we say, if you don't know anything, ask Google Baba, right? So that's how it has been for anything that we require. We immediately, the first thing that comes to mind is Google. Like even kids say that, Dad, if you don't know something, please Google and let me know. So that's how it has become. It's become synonymous to a search engine. And browsers, there are plenty, but these are the ones which are Internet Explorer, Chrome, Mozilla. These are the ones which are quite popular. On the application side, if you see, while here we talk about communication and a few other, there are quite other industries which has started adopting this a lot more, including EdTech, right? Education probably was using it to some extent, but now it has grown manifold. If you look at healthcare, for example, today, most of the doctor consultation happens over a video conference because of the COVID thing, right? And this, I don't think we would have imagined that earlier. Neither would the doctor would have wanted to do that. But today it's a need. And if you look at what does this open up is, if the doctor actually, anyway, we are consulting over a video conference, do I need to restrict to a doctor who is in our vicinity, in our locality? Or can I call up any doctor across the globe? It doesn't matter, right? So the same thing is sort of coming across with the employability as well. The reason I mentioned that as an example is, even from an employability perspective, today, a lot of people are talking about the gig economy, right? Where you're not stuck with one organization working from 9 to 6 or 9 to 10 in the night, but you're working more as an individual, as a consultant to an organization. So you say, okay, I'm coming here only for a particular project. I would do that, then I'm on my own. And the organization does not bother what I do the rest of the time. I could be working with another organization, of course, to ensure that there is no conflict of interest. But that's how it is moving too. So organizations are also thinking, the good part of this is, if you have the right skills, there is no boundary to it. Probably earlier you were thinking, okay, I would want to stay only within Delhi or Bangalore or somewhere. But today, you could work for an organization in the UN or US or Germany, sitting here in the Bangalore or Delhi, the comfort of your house. So that's a good part of it. The other flip side of it is to make sure that you are really skilled on what is required today and the future as well. Because remember, they have more options today. If not here, they would pick up somebody from elsewhere. So it's very important to stay relevant, and learning only starts in the schools and the colleges, but it's a continuous journey. So I'll talk about that a little later, but that's something which I just want to bring it up because the application has really gone much beyond, and so is the relevance of that. So with that, I move on to the next unit, which is on the entrepreneurial skills. So this is, again, more of a mindset, I would say. What this unit covers, I'm just listing out here. It identifies various types of business activities, demonstrate the knowledge of distinguishing characteristics of entrepreneurship. So can everybody be an entrepreneur? Yes, of course. Does everybody become one? Probably not. And why is it so? It's nothing really to do with intellect and all that, because one aspect is the innovation, for which you might require that. But entrepreneur requires a different mindset. It's more with a mindset. And my personal view on this is, most of the times, at least in my days when I passed out from the college, I remember parents used to say, you know what, there are only two options if you're in a science, either an engineer or a doctor. And if it's in a commerce, do a chartered accountancy, ICWA, company secretary, and that's it. So more or less, it sort of ends there. But today, if you look at it, the options that are there is beyond imagination. And it's something that you can also create. So gone are the days where you actually try and fit into a role. Today, what we're doing is you create a role and you sort of plug into that. That's how it has become. Just to give an example, like there are certain organizations that a friend of mine, he's actually director of marketing, but his title says CFO. And most of you would be thinking, if it is a CFO, it's actually a chief financial officer. Right? That's how we all relate to. But you know what? This person, his title is not chief financial officer. It's actually chief fun officer. And what he does is he actually does a lot of these employee engagement campaigns. Every Monday, he says, okay, people usually regret coming on a Monday morning, but he makes it so much of fun that people look forward to a Monday, right? And they've got couple of Limca book records, Guinness Book of Records. The reason I'm saying that is there are newer opportunities which are there. And you can do that only when you kind of have a growth mindset to sort of think beyond and see, okay, how can I be a little more creative in defining my own thing? And this was an example with an organization, but it's very much important for an entrepreneur as well. Now, moving on, here I won't spend much time. These are various types of business activities. We know about merchandising, manufacturing, services. They put that as MMS here. But again, if you look at it, even here, there is an integration, right? So especially last 4 months, if you see, most often you wouldn't have walked into a store. What you do is you just log on either to an Amazon or some other website or Big Basket or whatever it is. You order it, gets delivered. So if you see, there is a lot of integration which has already happened. What you had to do physically, for example, if I had to buy some groceries, I would go to one store. And then this concept of supermarket, everything came up, where you could walk in and find literally everything. So now it is gone a step further, where you're able to do all that just sitting at your home. And beyond all this, behind all this is what? It's all the technology which enables it. Right? Otherwise, you won't be able to sit here and do that. So again, reiterating the point is technology while it has been an enabler earlier, I think it is grown a lot more today. There are a lot more possibilities that you could think of when you look up at your career as well. Now, types of business communities, there are, of course, the small scale and the medium and the large scale. Not really delving into the categories, I think all of you understand. This is something which is very important from an entrepreneurship development, right? I think this also starts right from school, I would say. If you look at, this is again my perspective, it's not something from a NASSCOM or any other organization, but my personal perspective is, it's all about how they're nurtured, right? Are they able to think? Do they have the appetite to really try something and fail? Or are they programmed in a particular way saying that, okay, this is a sequence of things, this is how you should do it, right? Even when you look at the academy, I know a lot has changed now. There is a shift which is required, right? In terms of how we assess. Even in industry, if you look at it, while until about 2-3 years back, most of these recruitments used to happen based on your degree certificate, your percentage and all that. Now, a lot of organizations, the large organizations, are actually breaking up from that, right? They're saying, okay, why would I need to do that? Can we not just test their ability and the skills? Because ultimately you pay for their skills and ability, not for their degree or the certificate. So that is changing. And in fact, I can quote my own example. So I actually got much less than what anybody expected on my 10th examination. And obviously nobody was there to guide me, and we didn't apply for reevaluation. I had to struggle to get admission. So about 3 or 4 colleges or other schools which rejected me. And they not only rejected me, but they also said, you know what, science is not your cup of tea. I would recommend just take commerce. But thanks to my mom and the circle that I had, again, as I said, the theory of your average of the 5% that you're around, I had really good circle who actually motivated me to try, go beyond, not give up. And that's what I did. I shifted, I negotiated, actually got into science. And then I sort of emerged as a school topper, then went to the best engineering college and so on. That's all history. But I'm saying it all starts from the root, right? And all of you have a huge role to play here in terms of how do you build that culture with the students. The earlier it is built, it's much easier. And I wouldn't just put everything on the teachers or the faculty members, because the parents have a much bigger role to play. It is not about outsourcing, as we call it in the industry, that I've outsourced my kid to you. It's your responsibility. It's a joint initiative. First, the parents have to do that. And then, of course, teachers have a huge role to play. So if you look at the entrepreneurship development, the first thing is research and discover. So whatever area you're looking at, do a deeper research on that, discover that. You analyze and evaluate to see, it's more like a due diligence to understand, is that an idea which is really novel? Is that something which is new? Does it have a market appetite? All of that is what you do there. And then, of course, you draw a blueprint, which is the design and develop. You get in the details of that and develop it. Then, of course, you identify what are the resources that you require to get that thing done. You implement, manage, and sustain and harvest. Sustain is, of course, very important. And how does it relate in your thing is also about the way we articulate it. For example, it could be a session, topic that you conduct. You say, okay, students, you do a research, come here. And it's like students actually take a class and teachers become only an enabler. Because at any point in time, I don't think they would be able to overtake that, because teachers with all the huge experience that you have, I think in probably a few seconds or a minute, you'll be able to gauge about the quality of the students. But it's more about enabling them. How do you enable them to really think from that mindset rather than spoon feeding and then making them dependent? And this is what, it's a little more in our culture, but I think things have changed a lot. Now, just going back, I just wanted to say this, the last arrow, right, which is absolutely important after sustain and harvest. If you look at it, you have to be really aware of the surrounding, be adaptable, because if you're not aware of the surrounding, your business could just crash. Now, if I just go back a few years back when, again, Nokia actually had this thing called a Music Express. They had launched this phone. This was a huge success. And then obviously we had a lot of companies like Sony, HMG and all that who were selling the CDs. They had a huge business. All of a sudden we had this iPod coming up and everything sort of vanished. So that's how the competition could be from any other industry. It may not be to your industry. It could be from somewhere else as well, right? And that is where it's important to be aware. And it should be kind of an iterative cycle. You can't say, okay, I have reached the pinnacle, now I'm good. You have to be aware and every point in time, just assess whether you're in the right space. Is there some more research? Do I have to reinvent the thing? And then do that. Just to give an example, if you look at, for example, Cult Fit, which is known for their the gym and the exercise and all that. They used to have a lot of outlets across India. I'm sure all of you would be aware of that. And imagine when the pandemic hit, the gyms were all closed and closed for months. So what do? The business is completely down. So it's all about how did they respond to it. I wouldn't say it's react, it's about respond. They felt, okay, this is an opportunity. Let me launch it in a mobile app. So they had these virtual sessions. And I see a lot of adoption across the industry, across the country, I would say. Right? And it doesn't matter, it's not restricted to the country anymore. If it's a physical thing, it's restricted. But today, anybody from across the globe can actually register and do it. So that's the opportunity which is there. The same applies even in the education as well, as we are getting into more of virtual thing. We'll have to think about what are the better ways. We are also constantly working with that from a NASSCOM perspective. Also, we're working with the government as well to make sure how do we make sure the students are getting skilled on things that are more relevant in today's world. Now, in terms of the key traits of entrepreneurs, I normally like to frame like an acronym so that it's easy to recall. So of course, without, I don't think there'll be any conflict there. Creativity is something which is very important. And creativity is not just about a product. It could be about your business model. It's about the way you position it. It could be anything. Risk-taking, absolutely important. As an entrepreneur, you need to have the risk appetite. Otherwise, you won't jump into that. So it's getting about the comfort zone. Optimism is very important because most often when you start something, you may not have success in the first attempt. So going ahead with the thing, accepting the failure and making sure that I would not give up and do it, that optimism is absolutely important. Passion, without this, none of the other things would really help. So passion is important. I think this applies everything that we do, right? Even as teachers or me in the corporate world or within NASSCOM as well. Unless we have passion, you can't do much. And of course, the last one, which is I talked about, is self-confidence. The crops is something which is important. The way we actually nurture the crops by putting in fertilizers or whatever, the natural things that you could put instead of chemical fertilizers. That is something that you as teachers and faculties are actually doing to the students, right? You're putting the required nourishment to the students so that they really grow, the crops really grow. That's very important. The other thing which is very, very important for all of us today, it's not just the students, is the learning agility, right? So learning, as I said, is a lifelong learning process. You've got to be aware of what's required in today's world. You have to unlearn, learn. For example, I'm sure most of you would have had a difficult time and you had to really adopt to the virtual world. But I'm sure all of you are comfortable and probably doing a lot better today. Right? It's all about just unlearning and learning. Adaptability, as I said, is very important because I gave you the example of Cult Fit. Because they were able to adapt to the situation earlier and they were present to that moment, they were able to think about a new business model and have much more success than what they had earlier. And the last thing, of course, is the growth mindset. This is very important for all of us again. So we could either be in a complaint mode, be a victim of that, or we be on the other side and make sure we really grow. So I say lag because if you're not following this lag principle, somewhere you will lag behind others. So these are the two acronyms which I would urge you to just keep that in the back of the mind so that it helps you. And again, these are not things which you've not heard about before. So it's not something which I really invented. It's more about giving a different perspective and putting it in a format which probably helps you in recalling that much better. So the last section actually talks about the green skills, which I'm personally very attached to, because anything that we do, at the end of the day, if you're not respecting the Mother Earth, the nature, anything, if you remember, if you go against nature, it'll sort of backfire. So it's very important for us to build this right from grassroots level in terms of how do you respect the nature, the environment, and take care of that. Because if you're taking care of the environment and the Mother Earth, the same thing will come back in multifold. Right? So we've been hearing about a lot of global warming, a lot of issues around it. And we are all equally responsible for that. Right? While at the one side, we're talking about the comfort, we also need to look at what is the impact. So as they get into the entrepreneurial thing, it is important to have the mindset in terms of what are they developing? Is there a real need for that? Is there an impact on the environment? Because at the end of the day, social well-being as you see here, is at the fulcrum, right? So it's a balance of the economy and the environment. Now, for example, the economy is doing really well. China and US, everybody's doing well. But when it comes to your social well-being, for example, when the pandemic hit, what happens? Everybody is at the same state. It is sort of a leveler now, right? COVID has been a great example of getting all of us at the same level. Now, the important thing is, are we learning from this? So it's very important that we recognize what the mistakes we've done and make sure we have the environmental angle also when we look at from an entrepreneurial angle. So while knowledge is absolutely important, when you're devising something, you look at in terms of what is the impact on the environment? Is there an alternate thing? For example, we're talking about fuel now. Instead of the gas and the diesel, can we use some of the green fuels as well? There are a lot of research is going on there. There's also research which is sponsored by Tata, where they're saying just from water, they can actually generate fuel. Right? So there are a lot of research happening there. And that's an area which, again, is very, very critical from a sustainability perspective. Right? And that's one area where I really like Bhutan, for example. Bhutan, if you know, that's the only country in the world which measures success based on the gross happiness index. So GDP, while is one aspect, they actually measure the gross happiness index. And again, when you talk about happiness, without the harmony with the environment, it is very difficult to get there. So it's very important. And where you can play a role is in terms of building the right attitude, the values, something which is very, very important. Even in the corporate world, you would have seen a lot of people who reached the pinnacle of that, and then they just crush because of the integrity issues. And that boils down to the values. So that's something which is absolutely critical. In terms of the sectors for green economy, I think it applies to most of the things today. And there's a constant effort to see how we can actually reduce the carbon footprint. How do we make it more green, right? Right from in terms of the construction to agriculture, construction. We talk about organic food today. Is to make sure that you have the right ingredients there, the NPK that they call the sodium, potassium thing. How do you have the right measure? Is it really, are we putting in more of chemicals there? So there's a lot of work to be done there. This is an important aspect. And this, I don't think we need to really well deeper. All of you would be aware, factors that are influencing the natural resource conservation. Okay? So things like the increased energy cost, higher pollution, we all know. The good side of COVID, at least, I'm not sure if it is going to be permanent, but at least in the temporary last 4 months or so, the pollution levels are actually definitely dropped, not just in Bangalore, but in most of the other locations as well. Population explosion, of course, is there. And that is where, again, as I said, COVID has been a good leveler for that. Now, at least industries are looking at if organizations, if individuals are working from home, do I really need to have everything in one place? I can probably have office with a capacity of 50, 60%, and the rest of the people can actually work from the native. So that's one way of, I would say, spreading the employees and making sure we have the explosion is also controlled. And of course, shortage of raw fuels, raw materials, conservation of resources is absolutely important that we need to take care of. Now, just moving on, since Ajit also talked about the digital skills part, and I've also reiterated the importance of all of these in our day-to-day life. Right? Now, while question could come in that, do we expect everybody to get into IT? The answer is absolutely no. We need people, we need good doctors, we need good automobile engineers, we need good mechanical engineers, we need good chartered accountants. But what has been happening now is, irrespective of all these areas that I talked about, technology is actually intervened already, right? So it's about an amalgamation of your domain skills plus your digital skills, which will probably give you the edge over others. So today, when I talk to some of the CXOs from the automobile industry, they say, you know what, I'm actually not finding anybody who has good automobile engineering skills plus an AI skill. Because we're talking about connected cars today, more of the revenue comes from the software component than their hardware component. So if you see, this is sort of become pervasive. It is cuts across all industry verticals. Talk about manufacture, retail, BFSI, healthcare. You would see most of these technologies playing a role. And in fact, while we have the Future Skills Initiative, which is an industry-driven initiative, we have a mission of reskilling 2 million of the existing workforce in the next 4 years. Which we are on track. There is also an effort with the Ministry of Electronics and IT in taking it to the larger population of India, to making them digitally skilled. And the reason I'm saying that is even government actually recognizes that skill, especially in the digital area, could be a major differentiator for us. And it's not just about differentiator. If you're not doing it, it could also have an adverse impact on our economy. If you look at it, this is just giving an indication about what are the installed talent base and the demand supply gap. The demand supply gap is also expanding on year basis. What you see is a projection between now and 2023, and it is growing at about 30% compounded annual growth. Right, so this is very important, and one of the work that we've recently done with Niti Aayog and the Atal Tinkari Labs as well is we've come up with some modules on AI, which are the base modules and the step-up modules as well. So I would encourage each one of you to, probably if your school is already enrolled and they're using it, that's fine. Otherwise, I would encourage each one of you to go to this website, which is AIM, Atal Mission, Atal Innovation Mission, .gov.in. aim.gov.in, and you will be able to download these modules there. There are base modules, step-up modules. So I would highly encourage each one of you to go learn about these technologies. These are at a conceptual level. I don't think you would have a challenge understanding that. There is a myth saying that if I don't have a computer science background, I might find it difficult. It could be. It won't be on par with people who know that, but I wouldn't say that will be a showstopper. You can definitely acquire that, because the more you learn that, it'll be easier for you to impart it to your students and make sure they understand the relevance of these technologies. It's not the beyond end all, as I mentioned earlier, but it has definitely become a very essential part of our life. So that is one, aim.gov.in. I would also give you a link to other portal, which is FS Learning, fslearning.nascom.in, if I'm not wrong. You could just search for FS Learning on Google, you will get it. So there are a lot of good courses available there on some of these emerging technology areas and the other soft skills as well. So I would highly encourage you to just go have a look at there, and you can always reach out to any of us if you need more help. So with that, I would actually like to close the session here. Thank you all for listening patiently. And I think I would have added value to whatever you already knew, and wishing all of you good luck. And if there are any questions, you can put it up on the chat screen and I would like to take it up.
Thank you so much, Venkat, for that very informative session. We have some interesting questions, but maybe we can take them on one-on-one. We can work together to answer them since we have run out of time. May I ask somebody from CBSE, please, sir? Mr. R.P. Singh, sir, or Mr. Hello? May I ask somebody, Mr. Saha, if they are a part of this session? Very good evening, Mr. Biswajit Saha, sir.
Yes, good evening.
Yes, sir. He's the Director of Trainings and Education Skills for CBSE. So if you would like to say a few words, please.
बीच में डिस्टर्ब तो नहीं कर रहा हूँ, because I think some important session is going on. Huh?
No, sir. We have.
Can you correct me? Anybody?
Yes, yes, sir. This was very interesting, and we are very happy to hear from you. We have had the session is now closed. We have over. The module is over for today.
Okay. So basically, thank you for all this. NASSCOM, or rather IT Sector Skills Council, for arranging this training program for the CBSE schools teacher. And special thanks to all the resource persons. Today, I thought of taking some feedback. How many participants are there?
So on Facebook, we have more than 700 participants right now live.
Okay. So I was confused to that. That's why I just seeing the panel. 14 members are there. So you made all the participant to join through Facebook, huh?
Right.
Okay. Fine. So thank you those who have joined us through Facebook rather social media. I think you have enjoyed the sessions, technical session. The idea behind this kind of training is to empower you with the new technology, and especially by the experts. You are already trained and you are taking sessions in the schools, but interlinking your expertise with the industry partner would rather will give you more light and energy, and which ultimately the need of the hour. If we look into this new education policy, that coding and computational thinking is being emphasized as early as possible, and even in the middle level that start from the class 6, we can start this kind of tech-based course. So IT is rather turmeric of all tech-based course, no matter what kind of career a student is going to take. Individually, this becomes a life skills. So more and more we can understand this particular technology. I think it will not only empower, rather it will also help and understand the other subjects also equally. And that's the beauty of IT. And I'm thankful to IT Sector Skills Council, because they are doing a lot of activities, including industry research, and they know what kind of job roles besides these OECD outcomes with reference to 21st century skills and future jobs. The market survey study and local requirements, especially in India and abroad. I think IT Sector Skills Council and that NESCOM strong associations with industry will able to translate this requirement for Indian school. And as early we know and empower our student in that light, I think over a period of time, they will not only able to understand that the academic activities, but they will be more competent to understand the applications of technology. And with this CBSE, as we have started artificial intelligence, we are trying to showcase the design thinking, and IT, of course, is an integral part of our curriculum. And I believe all IT teachers at this stage can take a rather a mission mode journey in the school educations for transformation. And that transformations will also require the support of parents, because in isolations, whatever technological requirement or software requirement, special emphasis should be given on that free and open source software, because branded one sometimes create again a confusions. At the early stage, more and more open source software penetrations in the school ecosystems is more viable, and that your management will also be happy because it does not require any sort of specific investment other than that computer systems. So that is one aspect. The other aspects is, of course, with respect to that cyber security, because with this use case, many a times that both the teacher and students is going to exposed with this internet. And internet, one way, it's being a lot of laurels and a lot of positivity in the systems, but at the same time, it is bringing a lot of accidental issue, which one cannot avoid. So intentionally, we need to create a mindset or positive framework, which some way help the students or restrain the students to exposed with dangerous situations. Unlike that gamifications, of course, is a positive outcomes, but at the same time, if it is linked with the father's or guardian's account, it is very dangerous. And besides, at the early stage, the different unavoidable things, including pornography and other issues, are also not healthy at the early age. So how we can empower the student? Besides your IT tools and technology, you need to empower them with respect to the confidence building so that they can avoid at first go. So there, I think that parent intervention is very much essential, and a positive support systems you need to build up. And then, of course, new technology, endless new technology you can open for the student. And here, platform-centric issues are also very much essential. Open this, especially on MOOCs. We must look into that all free platform and secure platform. The data security issue is somewhat not discussed at length in the school's premises, unlike European country, where basically even the parents, one parent is not allowed to take the snap of the other student. But here, the freely, if even if in a shopping mall, if something, some special drive, something is giving in free, many of us are giving our phone number and all micro details. Even for we are sharing so many things with our credit card companies and all. So similarly, in school also, in terms of science exhibitions or in terms of book fair, many organizations comes and take the phone number of the parents. Now, how far these things are feasible with respect to the child's own security whenever they expose to internet, they create email or other social media account, we can't restrict. But at the same time, sharing all the micro details with the other irrelevant sites need to be restricted in terms of empowering them. Again, I am using these particular terms because I'm stressing, because that's the way you can restrict. Otherwise, with respect to that nomenclature, with respect to giving so many instructions, may not be useful. So you have to have a positive relationships with the student and telling them the truth of IT and telling them the power of IT. And of course, in CBSE's platforms, here again, you have to support back in terms of not only training, rather what could be the ideal way of teaching IT in school systems with this reference to new education policy, age-appropriate IT skills that need to be developed. No fixed guidelines or no fixed curriculum is there, other than we offer at class 6, 7, 8 AI module, or 9 to 12 IT, web applications, AI, and typography and computer applications. So these are the IT related subjects we offered at this point of time. Of course, computer science and IP is also part of our curriculum. So that way, I think a fixed systems, a national standard for IT educations need to be developed. And I strongly appeal the NESCOM and IT Sector Skills Council to come forward and looking into the global dynamics, looking into the future skills, what way we can again and again organize multiple train the trainer programs, multiple teachers interactions. And in fact, I love to have all the experts to interact with the student directly and create an opportunity for internships or some sort of exposure visits in the neighboring IT industry, so that they can understand the implications and the use case of IT in real life, not that all those theoretical understanding with reference to the textbooks and all software-based learning. I think we need to really connect them with the real life and how the IT professionals are working. And if need be, again, NESCOM through their industry associations can share the list of IT professional, which in turns we can share with our IT teacher or school management, whom they can invite to take a special sessions with the student. Thank you once again for arranging this kind of training sessions. Of course, I will like to wish all the best to all the student, all the teachers who have participated through social media platform. Thank you, IT Sector Skills Council, and all my colleagues at CBSE for nicely arranging this forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, participants, for engaging so heartily in this session. We hope to bring to you such sessions in future as well. RP Singh sir, so if you would like to say a few words, please.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very thankful to sir for joining in this session, and I'm thankful to the speaker who has very rightly emphasized upon the employability skill component of the IT curriculum, and he has shown that it is very important component along with the curriculum also. The IT component is very important that we could not cover due to lack of time in today's seminar, but definitely we'll have a training sessions through NASCOM and also through our own resource persons with the teachers. I wish all the teachers all the best, and please keep watching the CBSE website for the notification regarding the training and the dates. And thank you once again to Director Sahasar for such kind words of wisdom and inspiration. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. We'll close the session now. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Abhishek, streaming बंद हो गया है?